vlogON, vlogging. vlogON, vlogit.
Once y'all clicked on that button, it was a wrap.
vlogON, vlogit. Do it now.
I want y'all to vlog on, vlog it. Yeah.
The ancestors left so much information.
Because they
so
seen
much
this
clues.
coming. They foreseen this
Yeah,
coming.
they saw it. And because it happened before over and over again.
Exactly.
You see, a lot of us are just going from transitioning from one age into the next. We haven't lived. We've known the world history. We've been keeping a good record of the world history for probably the last 2,000 years, right? But this shit been going on for way longer than 2,000 years. And if you're coming from 2,000 years, going from one age into another, right? What about all the other ages that you haven't been through yet?
But it's the world history as we know it. Because remember, if we were in the time we're in, we only could recall of the time we're in. You see what I'm saying? What's popular in culture. But imagine yourself being in the time back then. Things were popular in culture that, you know what I'm saying, that were frowned upon. You see what I'm saying? It was still talked about. You see what I'm saying? Because people knew of certain things, but it was frowned upon in certain things. They called it taboo in certain ways. You see what I'm saying? But people knew of it. Because it's always been naturalists out there. You see what I'm saying? Environmentalists, people that deal with nature. But at the same time, it's always been a thing that fights against nature. You see what I'm saying? And that's the thing. There's something that's fighting against nature, and it created nature in a way to fight against itself because it has a lot of our people doing the same cruddy things even worse than some of the white man would even do. You see what I'm saying? So you have to look at the thing as they not saying they as just them, but they as in us too. It's parts of us. You see what I'm saying?
You something, man. You see, I think nature is the most intelligent thing.
Of course, it's the most efficient thing in the universe.
You can think, you can conceptualize, and you can't even think of how intelligent it is because your intelligence is limited to, how far it can go. Nature knows beyond what you know. You understand what I'm saying? So even when you think, and this is not abdicating any responsibility. Because sometimes when you talk, talking in the way we're talking right now, people feel like, what's the point then, right? But nature has laid this whole thing out. So the man may look like he is doing something against nature, but he's only doing what nature wants him to do. Because it's always balancing out everything. You see what I'm saying? So it's like if it didn't make certain things happen, we'd go too far. You understand what I'm saying? And wouldn't be able to come back. So it has to get us to this point where we've gone into all kinds of shit, and it's gonna scare the shit into us, so we never want to go back to that again. You understand what I'm saying? We're eating junk food, we're eating fast food, we're eating all the sugar, the salt, this sodium, all the starch.
Really, when you look at it, it's a base. The base material that makes it up is, like you're saying, starches, which is sugars and different stuff like that. You see what I'm saying?
This stuff is killing us, man. It's killing us, and that's why we're getting all this cancer now, and all this stuff, from the food. And so people are scared. They're going back to the organic stuff.
But at the same time, organics is the original. That's where everything started from. So you got to go back to the origin of things that in the beginning as it was, so it shall be in the end. Even though it's not at the end yet, people feel because of the way that time, with all the way that they prediction the time and everything, they push it towards the doomsday prophecy. So people have the mindset of living in the end times constantly. They feel like the end is near because of the way that people could capitalize off of being the end is near. Somebody could make money. Somebody could profit. And in this world that we living in, a lot of people just try to profitize off of people's emotions. When you have a lack of control in your emotions, there's somebody that could profit off of it. So within that, it's just a simple thing as that. You have to go through it. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, but real talk still. What you say about the layers that we go through? I believe that too, you know? That you do go through like grades of or layers.
Cause some say it's they say it's the wavelength, the wavelength what is it, learning curve. But I don't like that word because it was created by a so-called white man. The learning curve in the early 1900s. And I don't like how he created the inception of what he created for. But it's like the wavelength that we on, the cosmic wavelength. You see what I'm saying? Like me and you is a wavelength, the speaking, the cosmic wave that is, you know what I'm saying, reverberating off of each one of us. That's how we're able to translate what we're able to translate. Anytime we make eye contact, we have something to translate with each other, depending on how you know how to get it out. And depending on how you know how to get it out, when you feel it, you get goosebumps from the person, and that's how you know that the change is being exchanged. You know what I'm saying? That's true exchange being exchanged when you feel the hairs raise upon yourself, and that only just comes from you and that person. There's other things around you too that's adding on to that, because even though, like you was talking about, is 96% of the universe is dark matter. You know what I'm saying? But that's a so-called new knowledge for the Eurocentric mind, which we're dealing in this time. You see what I'm saying? Because everything we're dealing with really is from a Eurocentric mindset. But in a way, we say we're trying to get back to the Afrocentric mindset. It's not really Afrocentric. It's really the natural, the most natural. You see what I'm saying? Nature in itself, how it was in the conception of it. You see what I'm saying? Because nature was meant to, like you say, move certain things. So like all of them, I try use certain things that is already in nature. They say is not natural, even though it's come from, you know what I'm saying, nature itself.